So listen, when you're trying to get to know a woman and trying to evaluate if she can fit into your life, if this is the woman that you can actually get into a serious relationship with, or maybe one day potentially marry, if that's on your radar, you got to be mindful of how you do your due diligence in learning about how she thinks, how she moves, and does she really share the same values as you, all right? And you can't allow yourself to think that you're just gonna learn as you go without being very intentional about finding out and asking very specific questions to help you understand what kind of woman you're dealing with. Because let me tell you, one of the biggest mistakes men make, when you hear all these horror stories of men who are married, a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them include men who did not properly vet the woman, who did not properly dive deeper into who she is, and therefore they married a woman who on the surface they thought everything was good, or they got so blinded by their desire for her, maybe because she was so beautiful, maybe she was very nice to them, whatever the case may be, but they did not see in advance, this is not gonna really work, all right? So you've got to make sure you don't skip these steps. So I'm gonna give you some questions that are great questions to ask in the early stages of dating a woman. Now, I say early stages because we don't need to wait months, years before we ask these questions. We need to get to it as soon as possible. Not in an interrogation kind of way, but in a natural flow discussion, bring these things up and let's see how she responds to them. So let's get to some of these questions that you should ask. And one of the big ones I want to talk about is asking her her view on attraction and keeping oneself up in a relationship. Now, we're starting here because, I'm a coach. I've coached tons of couples, individuals, men, women, you name it. And a lot of married couples as well. And one of the common issues that destroy relationships or destroy marriages, but it doesn't get highlighted enough, is loss of attraction. A lot of people feel ashamed or they're not allowed to point that out as an issue. So instead, everyone wants to focus on all the other stuff going wrong, but many times those things start to go downhill once the attraction was gone. Because attraction is extremely important. I think for most men, we recognize that. Now, if you are a man and attraction is not a big deal to you specifically, cool, do your thing. If that works for you, I'm not knocking it. But if you are a man and you are on the side of the more common perspective of, no, this is important to you, and it is going to affect how you show up in a relationship, well, this is extremely important that you have a discussion about it. Because not all women are going to see it the way that you do, okay? And so you want to ask her things like, how important is attraction to her in a relationship? And how important is to her after marriage? How important is it to her to keep oneself up? Because I've even met women where, I'll never forget, I met a woman, she was in her late 40s, but she was still trying to get married, and she was in the gym religiously. Okay, so I assumed she was just a gym rat. She loves the gym. That's it. One day we had a conversation and she was saying how, she's struggling with dating. And I forgot how the gym thing came up. Or I don't think it came up. She just out of her own mouth said, man, I can't wait to find a man so I can stop going to the gym. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, you don't like the gym? You're always working out. She's like, no, I'm doing this because I know this is what it takes to get a man, but I don't want to keep doing this forever. And so if a man would have gotten with her, it would have been so easy to assume, oh, yeah, she's about that life. I don't have to worry about this issue with her. And no, it was going to be a problem. And believe it or not, there are other women who will acknowledge this in some way, shape, or form. Like, I even had experience personally where I was on a date with a woman. And again, I've seen pictures of her online in the gym. When we talk, she says she goes to the gym consistently. But then when I asked the question or brought up the topic about how people tend to let themselves go after marriage, she made comments like, well, what's the big deal? Life happens. It's natural for people to fall off. And that showed me her mindset is no, she has no intention of truly making sure she doesn't fall down the same path. And for me, that's not going to work. And if you know for you, it's not going to work either. That's a huge red flag. And that right there is again, some people may say, oh, that's not a big deal. You shouldn't walk away from a woman for that reason. But you have to ask yourself as a man, can you be happy with a woman who is not going to put in full effort to maintain attraction in the relationship? All right. And again, everyone has their differences of what they like and what they deem acceptable or unacceptable fall off or variation from where we started. All right. Like for some guys, 10 to 20 pounds here, depending on how she's carrying it, may not be a big deal. That man's line might be 30 more pounds, 40 more pounds, or it might just be how she looks in a certain way. And it may not even be about weight. It may be about how she used to dress for you compared to now, how she keeps herself up around the house. Like I've met so many married men who complain that their woman never wants to look good inside the house. It's always these raggedy clothes and just looking a mess, right? And again, these aren't discussions they had early in dating, before they got to that point. So, all that to say, ask that question. Do not be afraid to be honest about how you feel and where you stand, because at least if you make it clear and then you guys proceed from there, when there is a need to bring it back up or to address the issue, you can always stand on, I've always told you this is what the deal was. I've always let you know how I feel about it. This isn't brand new, and you can't now act like I'm hitting you out of nowhere with this. So keep it real, but definitely talk about it. All right, so now let's get to another great question for you to ask a woman in the early stages of dating, and that is, what makes her feel loved? All right, so the reason why this is a very important question, and of course, this is with the mindset of we are potentially building a serious, healthy relationship, real commitment here. One of the big disconnects that a lot of men deal with in long-term relationships or marriage is they may have a genuine love for their woman, but they don't know how to tap into or how to speak to her heart, so to speak. They don't understand what truly makes her happy and what they need, what she needs. And unfortunately, and I'm not excusing this or making this okay, I'm just telling you what it is, a lot of women have a tendency to want you to figure it out, want you to be in tune with her enough that you can understand what is required without her having to spell it out for you. Now, I know we're not mind readers and it's unfair to place that expectation on a man. However, I would encourage any man, if you are serious about a woman, that you do pay enough attention to learn how to get more in tune with her. But we're never going to be perfect with it, right? At least most of us will not be. So because of this disconnect of she's not always trying to verbalize it, and as a man, you're just going to implement the things that you know or have been taught are ways to express love, well, sometimes those things hit really well, and other times they fall flat. And you don't understand, and the communication is lacking in creating clarity for that situation. So it's important that you ask a question like, what makes you feel loved? All right? Or what's your love language is a good discussion to have, so that you can have a better, clearer understanding of what it is that actually makes her happy. Now, if she is still resistant to giving you clear answers because she's in that mindset of, well, I want you to kind of figure it out on your own, which I would argue if you're willing to have real communication about it, there'll be less resistance to giving you answers. But you may come across some instances where she's a little either shy or, again, not articulating clearly because she wants you to kind of come to that conclusion on your own without having to tell you to do it. And in that case, again, I can't hold it against you if someone's making it difficult for you to love them. But you have to at least make the very real try of trying to gain a better understanding. And when you ask these questions and when you try to figure out what speaks to her heart, understand that it's not going to always make sense to you, okay? It may not always resonate with you and what you think is worth, an action worth love, so to speak. But it's not about that. It's about what is important to her. Now, the only thing for you as a man is you have to ask yourself, are the things that she needs to feel loved things I am willing and able to consistently provide? Because again, a lot of dudes, they get caught up in, okay, I really like this girl. I want to make her happy. And she gives them maybe some pointers of what she likes. And he's doing these things, even though they're uncomfortable for him, or they're not things that he really likes to have to do. And there are things that he can't sustain, but he's doing it initially off the hype of, I just want to get her, I want to get her. And then he gets her, but over time he can't keep it up, and now resentment kicks in from her side. Frustration kicks in. And you may be frustrated because you feel like, well, dang, I do so much for you and you're still unhappy, but it's like, no, you stopped doing the things specifically that she was looking for. You know what I'm saying? So just to give a quick example, let's just say you meet a woman and she's someone that wants a lot of quality time. And not just quality time, she wants to be up under you all the time. Now, for some of you guys, that's cool. That works for you. So you can sign up for that. But for some of you, you may be the type of guy that likes a little bit more space. That, yeah, you don't mind quality time and full attention when you're in each other's presence, but you need some time away, time in the man cave, whatever, for yourself. You got to be real with yourself in that moment and say, you know what, maybe this isn't going to be a right fit because I can't consistently provide that and be happy with it. And so that's why it's so important to have these conversations so we can discover as quickly as possible, are we really a good match or not? All right, so let's keep this going. Another big question to ask a woman in the early stages of dating is, what is her view on the role of a man and a woman in a serious committed relationship? Okay? We live in a time where you got some people who believe in very traditional roles, some people who feel like there should be no roles whatsoever, whatever. It's all over the place today. And it's important that you understand what her value system or what she believes is the proper dynamic for a relationship. Now, this isn't for me to say what you have to believe that the proper dynamic is. It's for you to understand what you feel you want to do or what's going to work best for you, and making sure this woman is on the same page as you. Now, if she gives you an answer opposite to what you believe in, that doesn't mean right away cut her off, let it go, run away. No, have a discussion. See if maybe there's just some misunderstanding. See if there's a middle ground we can find if you feel she's worth pushing further on that issue with, right? But if not, then we go our separate ways. Then we accept, again, we're not a good match. Now, in regards to roles, I'm just going to share this with you. I do believe that even if you don't believe in gender roles, which is fine, relationships thrive when people can know their role and work in that role and come together to complement each other with their roles, all right? So I still think it's important that there's some understanding of, okay, if we were to get into a serious relationship or possibly married, how do you view that dynamic working? You know, is it, oh, we should be doing everything 50-50? Is it the man's the leader and he's the provider? You know, the woman's the nurturer and the caretaker? Whatever. Lay it out, discuss it. But there's nothing to be offended by, because that's another thing I want to mention real quick. In today's world, I see a lot of men where they hold strong to their beliefs, and when a woman says something opposite of that, they almost view that as an opportunity to get into a verbal battle with this woman and show her where she's wrong, or you know, and all this stuff. And it's like, yo, there's no need for all that. We're not trying to battle. We're just trying to evaluate what this is. Can this work or it won't? That's it. And if we're not on the same page, cool. So be it. We move on. No love lost, no harm, no foul. That's it. We keep it moving. So don't make it into some kind of personal battle or be offended if she sees things a certain kind of way. Even if she says some stuff like the woman's the head and the man should just do whatever she says. Okay, cool. Well, respectfully, that doesn't work for me. So we're just going to have to end things where they are. That's it. That's it. And just keep it simple, but Get an understanding of how she sees things. All right, so we got another big one that is a common destroyer of relationships and marriages. And that is, you need to ask the question of, what are her spending habits like? And what are her views on money in relationships? Okay? Now, I want to start with this because, in today's world, there's a lot of women who are making their own money. And I think that sometimes men, when they meet a woman that they like who makes her own money and is doing her own thing, they figure, all right, well, I don't really have to worry about this money issue, or at least discussing it deeper, because she has her own. She buys what she wants to buy. I do what I got to do with my money. We're good. But you can't do that, because once you guys come together, there is like that whole my money, your money. And even if you don't see it like that, her spending and her views of money are going to have an impact on you and your life and the overall relationship. So you've got to get an understanding as early as possible. How is this woman when it comes to spending? There are women out there who, let's just say they make $5,000 a month. I'm just giving a random example, right? They're spending the whole $5,000. Like, to them, every dollar made is a dollar to be spent, okay? They don't have savings. They don't have any rainy day fund. They don't have anything. They just spend, okay? Now, if you're a man who's in a position where you can handle that and you don't mind that, again, that's your choice to make. I'm not telling you what you have to choose. I'm telling you, understand what you are setting yourself up for, all right? And so, is she frugal, or does she like to spend? Is she into the finer things in life, or is she okay with a more simpler lifestyle? You gotta gauge where she's at with that, okay? And again, I want to remind you to be honest about where you are with it, because there's a tendency by some men to, let's say they meet this beautiful woman, let's say she likes the finer things in life, but you're a simple man. That's not really your thing. But in trying to impress her and win her over, you're trying to keep up with her perception of the nicer things and doing all this fancy stuff. And again, it's not sustainable for you. And not only is it not sustainable, you are going to be unhappy in the long run, and you're setting the false expectation that's going to come back to bite you. So don't do that to yourself. If you're simple, you're simple. If you're frugal, you're frugal. Be real with how you're wired and what's going to work best for you. So discuss these things. Not to mention, and I'm not going to lie to you, because I'm not going to sit here and say every woman I've dated or talked to, I've talked about credit or what their credit score is. But listen, that is a good thing to gain some information on. Again, because we're trying to understand what kind of person are you joined together with. Because if this is a person with horrible credit, and understand, if someone has bad credit, you can't just stop at a bad number. You got to find out what the context is. Because I've seen people who literally paid all their credit cards on time, did everything right, but they have a hospital bill from when they were younger that ruined their credit, right? They could have that one thing that messed them up that may not have even been their fault. They could have been family, it could have been whatever. And that brings their score completely down. So if you just look at the score itself, you don't have the proper understanding of what's really going on with this individual and how they are with money overall. But discuss these things, and even also discuss what is the perception of how we handle money together. Do they view it as joint account that we all just pay our bills from? Like, all these things should be discussed. And I know some of y'all may be thinking, but hey, we're just dating. It's too early for all that. But why are we kicking the can down the road? Because if we can find out now things that are going to make it clear to us this can't work in the long run, well, let's not delay that. The sooner we can find that out, the better, so we don't waste our time in a dead-end situation. All right, so we got a few more questions for you to ask. And another good one is to discuss what are her pet peeves and deal breakers. All right. So I can't tell you how many times I've seen situations where, from both sides, I've had men come to me and They were dating a woman, they really liked her, and then out of nowhere, it just fell apart. And they don't understand why, right? They're completely confused, and it's frustrating, and it's hurtful. And on the flip side, I can't tell you how many times I was coaching a client or talking to a woman who tells me a story of how she was dating a man, and he did this one thing, and it was done, okay? Now, again, if you watch previous videos of mine, I'm not a believer in you see a red flag, you cut the person off, you're done. I believe in addressing things. There may be some exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, you address it. But that doesn't change the fact that the reality of life is some people are going to run at the first sign or the first action of that pet peeve that triggers them, okay? So as a man, you want to give yourself the best shot of not unknowingly sabotaging or undermining the situation for yourself. And by discussing pet peeves and things of that nature, you're giving yourself the wisdom to know how to better navigate the situation with this woman, okay? Because for some, it can be very simple things. And I think the more questions we can ask, the better. Like, I even think, I'm a firm believer in even discussing how much communication would the woman like what's her ideal level of communication so we can understand how much she needs to be poured into in that way, because you may have a very different perception of what that level should be, okay? Whatever it is, how we view special occasions, because I know for me as a man, growing up, I never made a big deal of special occasions. Like my birthday, graduation, I didn't really care. It was whatever, it's another day for me. But unfortunately, me not caring about my own caused me to not always understand the importance it had for other people, okay? And now, when I miss a date that I might think is not that serious, I don't realize how that may be very hurtful to that individual. And so in a relationship, there may be things that you swear aren't really a big deal, but to her, they are a big deal. So you want to have as much discussions as possible early on. And of course, there's no 100% way to guarantee that one, she'll give you the whole thing. Sometimes some women don't even know what all their triggers are. They don't know what all the issues will be, okay? But at least we give ourselves a much better chance of not making unnecessary mistakes that will cause problems and cause you to lose out with maybe what might be a great woman. All right. So here's another great one that I find to be a common disconnect in a lot of relationships. And that is discussing what is considered cheating or inappropriate behavior. Now, I think inappropriate behavior is probably the more important one to discuss than anything, because, listen, some things may not be cheating, but it doesn't make it okay. It doesn't mean you or your partner are going to be happy if it's done to you, right? And when we look at it from only the lens of cheating, well, if, for example, someone feels like kissing is cheating, okay? But anything short of that, there's nothing wrong with that. So, for example, she is hit up by an old boyfriend, I don't know, an old male friend. She goes out, meets him for lunch, tells you afterwards, but to you, that's inappropriate. It's like, yeah, you didn't cheat. Yeah, you didn't kiss him. But what the hell made you think it was okay to go see this man and not tell me? But in fairness, I just want to say this. Different people have different views. And so that's why it's important to discuss those views in advance, because if she's been dealing with a guy, let's say her last guy before, or even you as a man, let's say you've been in relationships where something like that was never a big deal, was never an issue. And so there's this natural inclination to think, oh, okay, it's not going to really be a problem. Everyone I've dated seems to be okay with this, but we can't assume this new person is going to be okay with it. And again, a lot of people shoot themselves in the foot or create unnecessary drama in their relationships because they did not have discussions in advance about what is considered inappropriate. But the reason why I also want to bring up cheating is because, listen, what I've learned is that there's a lot of different perceptions of what cheating can be. Some people will view looking at porn as cheating. Some people will view kissing as cheating. Some people view flirting as cheating, okay? Again, we cannot just assume they have the same views that we do, or assume that they understand where we're coming from when we never had a discussion about it. All right. And yes, we could say, well, some things are just common sense and people should just know. Listen, common sense ain't always so common. And I guess it's easier for me to understand how these disconnects can occur and how common they are because I've spoken to so many different people in my life through all these different scenarios, and I see how sometimes people just did not understand. But had they had a better understanding in advance, the whole issue could have been avoided. Okay? So discuss these things, discuss what is inappropriate behavior, and again, don't get caught up in trying to prove or fight why your perception is the right perception. All right? This is not about trying to convince people to think the way you think. This is about learning how she thinks, learning how she's already wired, and just determining if this is going to work or not. All right, so now last but not least, and this will only apply to those of you who are believers, who are spiritual already. But the other question you want to ask is, what are her spiritual beliefs? All right? I can tell you there's a lot of different belief systems in this world, okay? And there's a lot of misalignment when it comes to relationships and spirituality. And though it may seem harmless at first or not important enough to concern ourselves with, it very much is. And I don't want to get too deep into it right now, but I will say, again, if you're someone who believes in spirituality and is a believer, then know that there is a spiritual aspect to dealing with other individuals and how those things can impact us, all right, in our day-to-day lives. And you can meet a wonderful, amazing woman, but if she's entertaining certain negative spiritualities or things that can be harmful in your life, well, you want to be made aware of that as soon as possible. And you may be shocked what you may find out. I mean, listen, I've had conversations with people who say they are witches, who say they do this type of thing. That, like, I've heard and seen it all. And what's wild to me is knowing how the average man who dates them never even dives into that conversation. So they have no clue what they're walking themselves into. And then what's crazy is when things start to happen to them or affect them, they don't even know what's really going on and where this is coming from. All right? But had they known or had they had that discussion with that individual, and trust and believe, at least through my experience, people will tell you. If you ask the right questions, if you discuss these things, they're not going to lie to you. They will tell you because most people, whatever their spiritual belief system is, they feel confident or they feel certain about it. So then they're not hiding it thinking there's something wrong with it. They're going to just say it because to them, no, this is the right way to do things, right? But depending on what your belief system is, like, it can be come into complete conflict with it, all right? So you want to have those discussions and you want to make sure that, again, you are joining together with a woman who can embrace your leadership in that realm or in that role or in that dynamic of life, so to speak. I don't know if I'm saying things wrong right now, but you get what I'm saying. Like, she has to be able to come into alignment with you as a man. That is my belief. And if not, you're gonna have problems. So discuss these things. And hell, let me say something. Even if you're not spiritual, right? I still think you should probably find out. You need to have an idea of what you're about to deal with and what that belief system entails, because it's not just about the spiritual aspect. Certain belief systems come with certain principles, okay? So you're gonna have a better understanding of who this woman is, or at least you can now use that to have a deeper discussion on how does she view those principles. Because some people are practicing a certain religion or whatever in name, but not in actual, like, how they live their life. So you want to see, okay, are you really about that? If she's Muslim, okay, is she really on that, or is she just Muslim in name? And what is that going to mean when we want to come together? What is that going to mean if we want to raise kids? All these things need to be discussed so that you don't get yourself caught up in a situation that you do not belong in. So now, before we end this, one thing I want to add and just encourage you men with is, listen, there's going to be some situations where you meet a woman that you really like. And sometimes you may be fearful of either asking some of these questions or diving deeper into it because you don't want to hear the wrong answer that's going to make you say, I gotta let this girl go, all right? You may really want to entertain her for at least a little while or whatever. I'm not here to discuss whether that's right or wrong. I just know that it happens. And I want you to understand, listen, don't set yourself up for a bigger headache, all right? It may be tough to discuss some of these things, but you got to discuss it. And if you get resistance from her and you're approaching this in a very just calm, loving, positive manner, not in an interrogation or attacking way, and she is not willing to join in this conversation with you, well, that's a concern right there, all right? Because if we can't have open and honest communication, we're not going to be able to have a strong, successful, healthy relationship. So learn to ask these questions. There's a lot more, and I'll make more videos adding more questions to the list, but these are some great ones to start with and get a better understanding of the type of woman that you may or may not end up with. Yo, thank you for watching this video. I hope and pray it was helpful to you. Be sure to watch this one over here on 7 reasons why she pulls away when things are going good. And when something real is experienced, it exposes her in a way that now makes her very scared, all right?